Hey guys, Matt. I'm really sorry. Today I can't get my virtual background working. It just isn't going super well. I've tried now for about close to 40 minutes trying to get it to work, and it just isn't working. Just isn't doing it. So instead, just get the blank white kitchen wall that I normally sit and teach at. I had this really cool palace that I wanted to show you guys. It was in the background. It was actually the location of what I was going to talk about today. We're talking about faith. What is it? And specifically the story of Esther, which is found in the Bible. It's an entire book. And the story of Esther takes place in an ancient city called Susa, which was a Persian capital. And King Xerxes built a palace in Susa, and that's what I had behind me was a big palace that I was going to show you. And I tried doing another picture of the ruins of Susa so you can see what it looks like today, and it just nothing was working. So you guys just get me and my blank, boring wall. Maybe next week I'll figure something else out and make it a little more lively, a little more fun for you guys. But nonetheless, we press on and we push forward and we do what we're supposed to do. So tonight we're talking about faith. What is it? I don't know. You guys know what faith is? You have any guesses what faith is? Is it something you touch? Is it something you can buy? Is it something you can see? Can everyone put their binoculars on? Look around the room. Do you guys see faith? Hello? No? It's a little bit of a tricky subject sometimes. Faith isn't tangible. It's not something you can hold. It's not something you can see. Well, or even buy. But it's something that we have, and it's something that we can use. There's actually a whole book in the New Testament called Hebrews, and it talks a lot about faith in that book. And the famous faith chapter in the whole Bible is Hebrews 11. In that chapter, the writer of Hebrews goes through and he talks about all the men and women in the Bible who have been great examples of what it's like to have faith, specifically faith in God, faith in Jesus, and what does that look like and everything. So in Hebrews 11:1, it says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. That can be somewhat confusing to understand. I myself don't even fully grasp it. But that first part of the statement, I think, is pretty easily definable. Faith is the assurance of things that are hoped for. Meaning, if you have faith in God, you believe in God, and you know that He's going to work out everything for your benefit, for your good, and for other people's good, because it's part of His good plan, then you have hope. And all that hope is reassurance, knowing that everything's going to work out the way God needs it to, the way God intended it to. And we're going to look at a story here in the Bible that actually is a pretty good example of that, a pretty good example of faith being the assurance of something that's hoped for. And the story we're going to look at is the Book of Esther. Have you guys read the story of Esther at all? Do you guys have a big Bible with thousands of pages with the Book of Esther opened right in the middle there? Or do you guys have maybe a picture Bible? I wish I had a picture Bible. Picture Bibles are really cool. I read one to Joseph almost every night, and whoa, I wish I had a picture Bible, let me tell you. But instead, all I get are these words. It's not boring, but all I get are words. So if you guys haven't read the story of Esther, I'm going to give you a little summary, a little synopsis. That means a little summary of it. And I'll kind of explain what's going on, give you the setting, the people involved. And if I had the palace behind me, you would have seen that. But instead, I guess not. So anyway, let's dive into this here, and I'll give you an example of what faith being the assurance. I'll give you an example of someone using faith and being assured of the things that they hope for. There it is. All right, here we go. So the Book of Esther is kind of found right in the middle of the Old Testament here. Here's what's going on. The Israelites are no longer living in the kingdom of Israel. They got taken over by another country, and that country took all the people in Israel and moved them into another piece of land. So they took them out of Israel and moved them into a new country. Well, that was Babylon. Babylon took over the Israelites. But then this new emerging country called Persia came into place, and they conquered Babylon. So now the Israelites, who were once conquered by Babylon, are now conquered by the Persians. And the Persians have this guy named Xerxes. He's a king. Xerxes. Try saying that 5 times fast. Xerxes, 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 Xerxes. Xerxes. That's really hard to say. Xerxes. How many more times do you think I could say Xerxes? Anyway, so King Xerxes was ruler of land as far east as India, if you guys know where that is, that's in Asia, and as far west as Ethiopia, that's in Africa. And if you guys know what the map looks like, you can picture how big his country was, and he ruled over all of it. Now, the Israelites were just people living in the land. They weren't really allowed. Some of them weren't allowed to practice their customs. Some of them were. Some of them were despised, some weren't, and they were just kind of living in a foreign land. They weren't in Israel. And so that's kind of where our story takes place. Now, Xerxes, one night, throws a party, and his wife makes him upset. His wife is the queen, and his wife just doesn't want to obey what Xerxes wants him to do. So then he gets mad at his queen and basically says, fine, I'll find a new queen. So what he asks all of his officers to do is, he says, go across my entire land, find the most beautiful women, bring them to me, and I'm going to pick a new queen. That's basically what happened. It gets a little more complicated and intricate, but we're going to keep this straightforward. Well, sure enough, one of the ladies that gets picked is this girl named Esther. And she goes before the king, and the king just falls in love with her. He loves her more than all the other women that he's met, so much so that he decides to make her queen. So imagine being king, and then you pick the queen. This is a high level of authority. It's kind of like the president in our country, and then he has a spouse, and that spouse is pretty far up the command tree. That's what Esther was. Esther was right there next to the king. She was queen over all of Persia. Now, here's the thing. Esther didn't tell Xerxes that she was a Jew, an Israelite. And that's important. So fast forward a little bit in the story. I know you're probably like, what's this got to do with faith, Matt? I'm getting there. Stay with me. Fast forward a little bit in the story. Esther has a cousin named Mordecai. He gets himself in a little bit of trouble with this guy named Haman, Haman, or Haman, or Haman. I don't really know how to pronounce it. There are a lot of names in this book that are really hard to say. But Haman, he's a prime minister. He's basically what would be like a vice president. He's second in command. And Mordecai and Haman are kind of arguing with each other. Mordecai's a Jew. Haman knows that. So Haman comes up with this plan. He says, you know what? I don't like Mordecai. Because I don't like Mordecai, I'm just going to make a plan, and I'm going to kill all the Jewish people. Whoa. Big problem. We have Esther, who is an Israelite, who is queen of Persia, even though her husband Xerxes doesn't know that yet. Mordecai, who is Esther's cousin, gets in trouble with Haman, and Haman wants to make a plan to kill all the Jews. Whoa. So Haman goes to King Xerxes, and he shows him his plan. Xerxes doesn't know that his wife is a Jew. He doesn't know that his wife is an Israelite. By the way, if you didn't know, Jew and Israelite are kind of synonymous here. So that means they mean the same thing, just so you know, in this story. So Xerxes doesn't know that his wife is an Israelite, a Jew. And because he doesn't know that, and Haman comes and says, I have this plan to kill all of the Israelite people that are living in our nation. I think it's a good idea. They're just a nuisance. Let's do it. King Xerxes says, okay, let's do it. Let's kill all of the Israelite people in our country. But we're going to do it in 1 year. Not tomorrow, not next month. We're going to do it in a year. Well, it turns out Mordecai, Esther's cousin, finds out. And he tries to warn Esther, and he goes to her and he says, listen, this guy, this bad man, Haman, has a plan to kill all of the Israelites. And you, Esther, are the one who can stop it because you are queen, you are next to the king, you can stop this. So a little bit back and forth goes on. Esther talks to the king a couple times. Nothing's really progressing until Esther finally throws a party and she invites her king, her husband, and she invites Haman, and they're at the party. And King Xerxes says, you know what, Esther, I love you so much. Tell me what you want, and I'll give you anything you want. Even half my country, I'll give it to you. You tell me one thing you want, and I'll give it to you. At this point, Esther has a decision to make. You know, she's talking to her king, who's in charge of everything, and she doesn't know how he's going to respond. She doesn't know what he's going to say. All she knows is that she has to do something that's hard. And she has to talk to the king and convince him to not kill her people. Now, this is what she says right here. This is in chapter 7 and verse 3. And so Queen Esther replied. Remember, Xerxes asked, what do you want? I'll give it to you. And she says, if your majesty is pleased with me and wants to grant my request, my petition is that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. For my people and I have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. If we had only been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet, for that would have been a matter too trivial to warrant disturbing the king. To which King Xerxes says, well, who did such a thing? Who would dare touch you? Who would hurt you? You're my queen. Who would hurt you? To which Esther replies, the wicked Haman is our enemy. And Haman grew pale with fright because he got found out. And he's like, wait, what? At this point, this is when everyone realizes that Esther is an Israelite. And King Xerxes suddenly realizes his error in saying, we're going to kill all the Israelites, which he didn't know at the time, but now he does, includes his wife. And Haman now realizes, wait, I made a plan that would involve killing the king's wife? That's not a good idea. So sure enough, everything gets found out. And Esther, who had the opportunity to change it, to fix it, to save her people, did it. Now, there's a lot of other nitty-gritty details that happen after that, but I'll let you guys read that on your own, or you can ask your parents to read you what happens after that, because, yeah. So what does that have to do with faith? How does that define faith? How does that help us understand what faith is? Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. Mordecai realized Haman's plan, that he wanted to kill all of the Jews in the country of Persia. And he went to Esther and he said, you can fix this. Mordecai had faith in God that he could use Esther to save the Israelites. Esther had to have faith in God that he would soften King Xerxes' heart so that she could appeal to him and tell him, please don't hurt my people. It's a good story because faith involves, I would say, two things. One, sometimes you have to do something hard or do something that you're uncomfortable with. For example, Esther had to talk to King Xerxes, and to talk to the king, even if it was your husband, was actually a really hard thing to do. You see, the king could do anything he wanted, whenever he wanted, however he wanted, depending on whatever mood he was in. So if you talk to the king in a bad mood, something bad might happen. You talk to the king in a good mood, that doesn't necessarily mean something good would happen. Esther had no idea how Xerxes would respond. She had no idea if Xerxes would say, you know what, I don't care if you're an Israelite, I don't care if you're my wife, we're going to go through with Haman's plan. She had no idea if she would get thrown in jail. She had no idea if she was going to be honored. She had no idea if she was going to be let off the hook. She had no idea if her people would get exiled or if they would get slaughtered the next day. She had no idea. But she had to do something hard. She had to raise her voice, take a chance. And this leads to point number 2. She had to trust God, that God would soften Xerxes' heart. Mordecai had to trust God that he would use Esther to save the people. And I would say faith involves 2 things. Sometimes you have to do the hard part and take a chance. Take a chance and then trust God to do the rest. And that's what Mordecai did, and that's what Esther did. They both took a chance and they both trusted God. And it turns out their hope was assured and the Israelites were saved. I hope that's a good lesson for you guys. I hope you learned something tonight. Let me pray real quick and I'll let you go. God, you are good. You are faithful. You are powerful. You are strong. You helped Esther. You helped Mordecai. And if you could save an entire nation from being destroyed, from being killed, you can also help us in our everyday lives. Help us to walk by faith, God. Help us to trust you and help us to take a chance and do something that we might be uncomfortable with, but trusting you that it will work out. In Jesus' name, amen. Good night, guys. I'll see you next week. And hopefully I'll get this stupid background figured out. Bye.